it's been a challenge and a journey, but I always try to tell myself that I'm not successful. I'm not a success. I'm not a failure. I'm a person who succeeds or a person who has failed at one thing, but I am also a bunch of other things. I'm a reader. I'm a writer. I'm a arithmeticker. I'm a businessman. I'm a son. I'm a husband. I'm a puppy parent. Like, I'm all of these things, and I wouldn't let any of those other things define me. So I can't let the success or failure of a singular thing define me, or even a string of successes or failures. It's helped me stay grounded, and it's helped me really survive through this very turbulent time, even though, it's very hard to keep a good mental state these days. But I think that if I was not able to separate those things, I'd be in a very, very bad place right now.
Hi, I'm Chris Ippolito, and welcome to Get Coach 360, where I'm documenting my journey from employee to entrepreneur while featuring the coaches that are helping me along the way. Each episode, these coaches provide actionable advice to help me and you, the audience, find more success as entrepreneurs. I invite you to join the journey so we can go and grow together.
Welcome to another episode of Get Coach 360. In this episode, Chris sits down with serial entrepreneur Russell Nohelty, founder and publisher of Wannabe Press, as well as helping creatives build better businesses over at The Complete Creative. Russell discusses the journey of a creative and the mindset he feels you have to both maintain resilience through the inevitable failures, but also to keep your successes in perspective. Russell points out that no one is a success or a failure, but rather we are all people that either succeed or fail at certain things, but none of those things define us. Russell also explains the importance of embracing our failed creations and how to possibly leverage those failures to actually increase revenue. He also goes on to walk us through how to validate our ideas by growing both our own confidence in our ideas as well as an audience, and also discusses when and how to leverage the Kickstarter platform for validation. And, as always, we'll close with Russell sharing his advice for how you can take action now to level up wherever you need it most.
Hi, Russell.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, welcome to the Get Coach podcast. Glad to have you here. I, as you can see in your background, so for those watching on video, I love the Chulu and what's the other one there you got?
Our most popular book is Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, and then my most beloved book by my fans is Ichabod Jones' Monster Hunter. It's a book about a psychopath that escapes a mental asylum and becomes a monster hunter. Doesn't know if he's killing monsters, humans, or it's all in his head the whole time. And then back there behind them is our mascot, Melissa the Wannabe for Wannabe Press, and she represents everything a good wannabe is: rebellious and creative and spontaneous and snarky and no nonsense and just like kind of like goes or used to go to like punk rock shows, disrespects authority, and just like wants things to like happen their own way.
I love it. There was when I saw that stuff when we did our original call, I knew there was going to be a good connection because I'm a bit of a geek at heart. I've done a YouTube channel where all we do is play board games for 9 years. So I knew there was going to be a connection.
Awesome.
Russell, I'd love to start the episode off with, if you could share your story. Where have you been and how did you get to be where you are right now?
Sure. So going back, I raised on the East Coast, born in Jersey, grew up in Virginia. I went to school in Maryland. After school, I went to work on Capitol Hill, like almost all people from DC tend to do. I was doing live shots, so I worked for Fox News and MSNBC and covered Easter egg rolls, and I did some work for Comedy Central and all stuff that sounds way cooler than it actually was. So then I left that job after about 6 months because news is hell. And I started my first company. Kind of get the timeline confused because I had so many companies in my 20s. But I believe my first company was a company called RPN Photography, which was a photography studio. I went about $30,000 in the hole on that one to get equipment. And I started shooting fashion photography and a whole bunch of other like stuff. So I did fashion photography, portraits, and movies and TV. And I went on a shoot in Denmark. I directed television, and I shot movies, and I directed movies, and eventually I became the executive producer of an internet television network and helped them build their beta for their internet television network. Meanwhile, I was directing movies, as I mentioned, and I had two other companies during that time. The first one was called Insert Name Here Productions, which was a production company that went nowhere. And then my second company, BNS Media Group, ended up producing one movie called Connections, which is quite mediocre, and you can find it online on YouTube. It's broken up into, I think, 10 episodes. Not anyone else's. Like, I take full blame for like the mediocrity of it. The actors were wonderful. The shooting was wonderful. It's just like there wasn't a lot going on in the directing or writing department, except like there was a couple moments that I'm very proud of in the first couple of in the show, like a couple of writing moments that I really love. After that, I got in a car accident in 2008, lost my job, was in a neck brace for 6 months, and started writing. It was the only thing I could do. I couldn't shoot. I couldn't do anything else. So I decided to learn how to write really well. I'd written the movie, that very mediocre movie, but I wanted to be slightly better than a mediocre writer. And so I had heard something about the first 10 scripts you make are going to be terrible. So I just wrote like 10 scripts in 6 months, just got hope. What I thought was all the bad writing out of it. God, how naive I was. And during that time, we moved to LA. And between 2008 and 2010, I lived the life of a struggling screenwriter who got bounced in and out of jobs, mostly on unemployment, mostly not getting work. I had like the manager, I had like the whole like LA thing, except the meetings and the money. Actually, that is the LA thing, to have it all but the meetings and the money. So then my manager introduced me to comics. And comics, I fell in love with comics and started making comics. And we made a book called Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter. Katrina Hates the Dead. I started writing novels. I wrote a novel called Gumshoes. I wrote a novel called My Father Didn't Kill Himself, and I wrote kids' books. And got some publishing deals, and then those publishing deals were horrible, and I pulled them back, and I owned the rights because I figured I could be a bad publisher or a mediocre publisher. Like, I've already made a mediocre movie. I could definitely be a mediocre publisher. So I started my company, Wannabe Press. Wannabe Press makes weird books for weird people, people like our B. Melissa back there, and started having some success. And Wannabe Press, one book led to 2 books, led to 5 books, led to 10 books. And I started making a name for myself as a publisher, figuring that I would never be able to I'd just be publishing other people's work. But then something magical happened in 2017. I had a book called Monsters and Other Scary Shit, which has actually been used as a D&D manual by some people. So that book made my career. Our next book, Pixie Dust, kind of solidified it. Our book after that, Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, which you can see back there, kind of made me a staple of the indie community. And I was kind of off to the races. Around that time, I had been asked questions by every independent creator that I knew, because like I had broken through. I had done this thing. Mostly because I had studied meticulously everything about business and manipulated it for my needs since about 2012. I became a sales manager at Sprint. I did all this stuff so that I could like really learn marketing and sales. And so as we were being successful with our book Pixie Dust, I wrote a book called How to Build Your Creative Career. And from that, we spun off the educational wing of my company to a site called The Complete Creative. The Complete Creative helps artists build the best work of their life and share it with the world. And it's kind of a repository for everything that I've talked about since 2007 when I started doing this. And I've had multiple sites, and often the things will be transferred from one site to the next and then that site to this one. So some of the writing really does go back quite a long way, but it's kind of an unbroken chain, hopefully, or a semi-unbroken chain of like basically how to live a creative life, broken up into 3 sections: breathing, mindset, how to like get in the right mindset for having a creative career, creating things, how to make better stuff, and then selling it, how to share it with the world. And that is what I do now. I split my time pretty much between my own books at Wannabe Press and anthologies, and then The Complete Creative helps creators and coaches creators and helps them build mailing lists and build their career and really like take themselves to the next level.
Right. That's awesome. It's quite the journey you've gone on. And I love the fact that you ended up being able to ultimately land on something that you're quite passionate about. And it seems like it was always something that you were kind of striving towards, but maybe didn't know how. Do you know what I mean?
Well, the beauty of like doing each company is I think I got slightly higher each time. So like the first company, maybe I learned 20% of it, and then 40%, and then 80%. And they all just kind of, then I became a sales manager or salesman, and then sales manager. And I started learning marketing and sales and like doing all of this other stuff. And like eventually that all led to, I don't think I launched at 100%, but it led to like that company that was able to break through and all of that stuff. And some people much smarter than me can read and then implement things. I find that I have had to suffer for it all and do it, and then I could teach it. So, but when people come to my site, like I hope that what they see is somebody who has really like done it and like has gone through the hell that they will have to go through and can show them how to get through it without wasting the $100,000 in 10 years that I did.
Yeah, absolutely. The learning by doing, I think, is a very common theme I've noticed as far as the people that have been successful, whether it's the people I've interviewed, the books I've read, the podcasts I've listened to. There's very rarely a story where it's like, I read a few books, applied those lessons, and I had success straight out of the gate. Doesn't really happen very often.
Well,
I have heard stories of it though.
Yeah, well, the problem is that even if you do things the exact way that I tell you to, there is a lot of testing involved because your audience will be different than my audience, what they respond to, what you respond to, how you build, like how your brain fires neurons, like all of it is different. And so no matter, even if you get plopped down the perfect system, it's still going to take some testing. I guess there are some people that just like pay to have the system implemented and optimized, and like they don't care about any of that stuff. And like I'm not that human, but for the most part, I think the problem is like no matter what guru you follow, their path can only get you so far because they had breaks that it's not that they don't talk about them. They just had like a set of things at the beginning of their career that like Neil Gaiman is one that I bring up all the time. Like he's like one of the most famous writers of all time. But he also started as a journalist, and before he got his first breaks, he like met and interviewed every like influential writer and editor in the UK pretty much. And so when he went to do his book proposal, he already had like a leg up. And you have different legs up. So because of that, you're just the way that you construct your company, even if someone tells you exactly what to do, will be different. And I can prove that because if you've ever run Facebook ads, you probably have mistakenly copied an ad and run it with the exact same image and the exact same key. Like literally, it's the exact same ad because how you duplicate the ads, and you just like forget one, and so I accidentally. Like you just happened in one ad set to get these same two ads. And despite the fact that those same two ads were started at the exact same time, they do not have the same cost per click. They do not have the same conversion rate, even though they are literally the same ad.
Yeah, Facebook, I would agree. I've not done a lot with Facebook, but I've heard that as far as the experience with it, which is always funny when there's a lead magnet out there that is like, copy this exact Facebook ad and you're going to get tons of sales and tons of business. And it's kind of like, well, that may or may not be the case.
Yeah, I mean, we can see that. Oh, go for it.
I was going to ask a question about like what, with all the businesses that you ended up doing and just, it didn't really turn into the results that you were looking for. What were some of the more valuable lessons you feel you learned coming out of that?
It's not about you, it's about them. That's the number one. That like you are the conduit for what your audience wants, but like you are nothing without them buying your work and enjoying it and embracing it. This doesn't really matter at all if you don't have a community of people, both fans and other creators or other network people to go through it with you. Uh, Money is replaceable, time is irreplaceable, and people are irreplaceable. Um, once you can make money, like you can just make money. Like it's just like like the value of that money. Like it's weird. Like the more money you have, the easier that you can do the thing to make the money. Like the less valuable you view the money because you know that you can just go and make more money. But what you find is that like the experiences and the people and the fans are the thing that are irreplaceable. They're the ones who are with you. They're the ones that like you turn to when you're down. They're the ones you celebrate with when you're up. And if you're not going to do it for them, like I mean, you can do it for you, I guess, but I've learned that it's much better, and the work gets better, and just the world gets better when like you're going through it with a bunch of other people. The most important lesson I learned, not to get in a down note, but last year was not very good for me for the first half of the year. We did a lot of launches that did not go well. I suffer from depression and anxiety and a bunch of other things. And about this time last year in 2019, I was suicidal because things were going so bad for me, like so bad. Every launch was going worse than the one before, and I had tied my self-worth to my success. So the one thing that I always talk about on shows with entrepreneurs is that your self-worth is not determined by whether you were success or a failure. It is intrinsic for you existing. It is the same self-worth that Bill Gates has, and Mother Teresa, and the guy next door, and the homeless person that's living in a gutter. Like it's the same. Like it is removed from the part of you that is successful or a failure, and you have to remove that, because it's really fun to tie yourself to your success, your self-worth to your success when you're on the way up. But I swear to God, you ain't always going to be on the way up, man. Mm-hmm. Even if you just drop down from like super successful to pretty successful, that drop still comes with it. Like you end up leveling. You end up like sort of leveling off, and now your self-worth is at this level of success. And if you drop down suddenly, so it's been a challenge and a journey, but I always try to tell myself that I'm not successful. I'm not a success. I'm not a failure. I'm a person who succeeds, or a person who has failed at one thing, but I am also a bunch of other things. I'm a reader. I'm a writer. I'm a arithmeticer. I'm a businessman. I'm a son. I'm a husband. I'm a puppy parent. Like I'm all of these things, and I wouldn't let any of those other things define me. So I can't let the success or failure of a singular thing define me, or even a string of successes or failures. It's helped me stay grounded, and it's helped me really survive through this very turbulent time, even though, it's very hard to keep a good mental state these days. But I think that if I was not able to separate those things, I'd be in a very, very bad place right now.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think what you went through is what a lot of people go through, but then don't open up, or they're not willing to share or seek, support. And that's something that I surprisingly a lot of people will go through. I've gone through my own personal journeys, and if it wasn't for having a support system, and it doesn't have to even be a big one, it's just having one person who's willing to kind of support you and guide you through it, or just be that person that you can kind of rely on, and they're your stability in a sense. That makes such a world of difference, so that you can do what is required to kind of get yourself back together. that was my personal journey anyways. I don't know if it ended up being something similar for you, but
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
lots of
one of the
value
things that
there.
really is helpful is for me, I'm a pretty rational person, so it helps to look at things rationally because like if so for instance, like I get down sometimes and think I'm a bad writer, despite the fact that I'm a USA Today bestselling author and like literally make my living on writings. I, like most people, think that I'm bad sometimes, and or a lot of the times. And I have to look and say, okay, so you are if you are a bad writer, then that means that all the people who have ever bought your books are either idiots or lying to you.
Mhm.
And so you have to are you willing to go to them and say that you're an idiot for liking my book? And I'm like, of course not. They're great. They're the best. They're the ones that support me. And so like you must objectively have some talent. Maybe it's not the talent to like be Stephen King, but like you must have talent to be, you must be a good writer on some level because these people trust you and they love your work. Okay, so that's good. So are you a failure? Well, you just launched a $30,000 Kickstarter. You just had X, Y, and Z other thing happen. Like you just spoke on this stage or that stage or had this person on your podcast or whatever the little win is. And it's like, well, no, objectively, like I'm not a failure. Like I got a degree from school or whatever thing. I graduated high school or like some point you were not like a failure. Like one day you were not a failure in your life and thus you can't be a failure. If like you are not constantly failing. A failure would literally never win, and that's not true either. So some of that objective stuff has really helped me. That's just how my rational brain works, and I'm married to a research manager, so who like literally is all data. So that also helps. But the other thing that helps is just building resilience. Is understanding that when you start something. So I'm a writer. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but I'm a writer. One in two people want to be writers. Like think they have a book in them. Say that I have a book in them, which is roughly like 60 million people, right?
Yeah.
And yet every year, only about 1 million books get published, and like that's a lot of books. I'm not saying 1 million is not a lot of books. What I am saying is like it ain't 60 million. So what happens is like a lot of people start something, and very few get to the next stage. Let's say half, way less than half, but like, a 60th. We already said like a 60th of people, 1 in every 60 people will like release a book, assuming that you think that every single book that came out was from a different human. And then some people will say, nah, I don't like that. I don't like writing a book. Or like or those other 59 that fell off along the way. And then some people will continue and some people will continue and some people will continue. And then you look back and you can say, wow, I really made it through a lot. Like I can't possibly be a failure because like I made it through a lot. Like I've done 200 episodes of my podcast. And while we don't get the viewer numbers that like I would like, I've done 200 episodes. Like how many people do you know that have done 200 episodes of a podcast? Like very few, even if they're terrible episodes, you can't be terrible all of the time. So, it's like, all of these things that you end up doing and like building together and the communities you go, like you can fall back on that, but you can also fall back on just the logical fact that, someone doesn't record 200 podcasts or raise $170,000 on Kickstarter or like sell thousands of copies of books or like be able to stay in business for 5 years if like they're a complete like failure. But you do tie yourself to it. It's really hard, especially when you're creative, because you like it means so much to you. Like you're creating this show, like your show, or you're creating music. Like it's a piece of you. Like you are not being with the people you love to be here with me. Who, I mean, even if you love me a lot, like there's no way you love me as much as the people that you like are around right now. Who light you up, like your wife or your best friends or whatever, but you're choosing to like put that into like this show.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of love there and like it's hard not to tie yourself to it. But you just have to, for your own sanity, understand that like this is a piece of your soul, but there's all the other pieces that make it up are equally valuable. And if any one of them left, you would hurt. but it would not destroy your whole existence. You would still be a human who existed in the world with value, even if like a big part of you was gone.
Yeah. There is so much value in what you just said there. I love it. That's a part of this particular episode I may have to re-listen to a few times. There is the fact that you're just kind of talking about like the value of consistency and just sticking with it, right? The fact that as a creative, you are literally putting a piece of yourself into all these things that you end up creating. And whether you are reaching, 1 million people or 100 people, there's still value there. And you shouldn't measure your self-worth to the outcome that comes. So just really, really appreciate what you're sharing with us today.
Absolutely. Well, there's another piece of that where there's a lot of people who are lurkers who like really love, for every person who really responds and is like hyper responsive, there's 10 or 20 who don't ever reach out. I know that because I have an email list of 20,000 people, or I have Facebook groups, or like I will send emails out and get X amount of responses, but then I will launch a product and like 20 times more than the responses will come in. And I'll post something and like, a couple of people will respond, but then I'll post something else, or I'll get an email out of the blue from someone I haven't thought about in years. And they're just so thankful of like the thing that I do, and they've never reached out. I just had somebody who pledged $25 for one of our Kickstarter campaigns. And in the fulfillment section, once you're done, you can like upsell and I'll do all of the other stuff. And she dropped $130 additional dollars from a $25 pledge. And like, you're just like, mind is blown by all of this stuff. And we tend to look at like, oh, I only got 100 downloads on this episode, or 200 downloads or whatever. But then like, it goes back to that community and that fandom where like, if you have it and you feel supported by it, even if it's a couple of people, like the people that the people that resonate out past that moment that you're sharing and don't comment, but like get changed by it is huge. I mean, my wife's favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut. He died before she like ever followed him on social media. She never met Kurt Vonnegut, so like he would have never known that like she was a fan of his. Same thing with like a lot of my favorite authors. Same thing with like this podcast episode is like, maybe I'll get one email from whoever the people are, but like, who knows who listens to it in 3 years and like their life has changed. You never know. But we judge ourselves by this moment in time where we're like, oh, I got 100 downloads this week, or like I only sold 10 copies of my book, or like whatever. But we're not looking at all of the ripple effects that go out of that, all of the people who are like telling people, and like the word is spreading and all of this stuff is happening. We are so tied up as creators, whatever you're creating, whatever business you're doing, or like just as a human, we're so tied up into what's next that we never look at what is behind us. We never look at like all of the things that we have access to, all the assets that we've built, all 200 episodes of that show, or all of those books, or like all of those things that like can still be I don't like to use the word monetized, but I'm going to say like monetized or relaunched, or like the impact can be doubled or tripled or quadrupled. I'm looking at like doing another launch for some of our products. And I'm like, well, like I have 10 courses or something like that. Like I could bundle the 2 most popular ones together, and then the other 8 can be add-ons, and like they don't sell very well. So like having an add-on like value thing, like it's not like I'm losing a lot of stuff in there. Or I have books that I put into book bundles that are like not my most popular books, but they've increased the value of the bundle as a whole. So there's all of these ways that we can look at the past and the things that we've done and bring them into the present. And one of the things that I'm very, very honored with how we've done the Complete Creative is we have this unbroken string almost of at least 5 years of my writing and podcasting and life that like I can look back at any of those moments and not know how many people have been impacted by it. But know that people were. I can go back and remember just like what the feeling was when I posted that on social media that day. And I wish we were better at understanding the holistic presence that we were making instead of just what the next episode was. And I wish that like we weren't forced to do that either, because that is how we're judged. So we put outmoded attention into the next thing because that's in a way how we're going to be judged and how our career is going to be judged and how the media is going to judge us and how like certain people in our cliques are going to judge us. But I try to not think about that when I'm launching products. It's very hard, but I try to think about the people who do back and are like in that community, and wonder at the fact that like anybody listens at all. I mean, like you could be listening to like Elizabeth Gilbert was just on the Tim Ferriss show this week, and like you could be listening to that, like Tim Ferriss, Elizabeth Gilbert, like two people, and instead you're listening to like me rant about like this thing. Like that's beautiful. That's like a beautiful thing that you've like taken your life, and however few or many there are, it's like we are bonded in this moment, and I try to judge my life on the quality connections that I make. We only have one KPI, which is a key performance indicator at my company, and it is not revenue. It is not success of products. It is the number of quality connections that we make in a week. That means these connections one-on-one. The one-to-many is good too, like the you then posting it out. But like this is the connection that matters. Me and you talking like this, doing conventions or reaching out on social media and like having a real connection, having a one-on-one communication. Those are the things that I judge our success by, because I don't know how much my book matters, even if it sells 1 million people, but I do know how much this conversation matters. And I can judge that. And I know that there is value there that permeates out. And if I can come and deliver, even if all I do is come and deliver like an impassioned plea to you that changes things like slightly, like that is worth it, because that is, as a human species, like what we're supposed to be doing. Like this whole rest of this is just like kind of like window dressing on like what humanity is based on, which is connecting with each other and helping us move to the next level. And sorry, that was a big rant. That is not any part of this conversation that we were supposed to be having about a different topic.
Okay. I'm actually almost considering like, do I even bother with that? But hey, since you brought it up, and you've made reference to it in the past, and I think we'll be able to actually tie it all together in a way. So one of the main reasons why one of the main topics I should say that we were going to chat about was, in a broad sense, was validating ideas, right? And in particular, leveraging platforms like Kickstarter on how to minimize your risk while testing if there is a demand or a market for whatever it is you're wanting to put out there. Obviously, in your case, it's very much on that creative side, but there are ways to validate whether it's a creative idea, a service, a program, a course. There are different ways of validation. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit as far as, some of the lessons you learned along the way. Because I mean, I think if I remember correctly, you have a course that teaches this to creators, right?
I do. And so we want to talk about the thing about validation, validating a product validating product on a mass scale is very good for a Kickstarter. A Kickstarter has to be a product that you like. So there has to be, it could be a course, it could be a pint of ice cream, but there has to be some product that you're getting for Kickstarter. So you can use a service as sort of a content upgrade or like a bonus, or like a like $50 level, you get like an hour of my time, or $500 level. But there has to be at the core like a product that you were offering. So that is the most important thing about Kickstarter. You can't use it to start a business or fund a charity or any of that stuff. There are other platforms for that. But if you want to make a cool kickstand or a pin or a book or a movie or a piece of tech or whatever, then like Kickstarter is a great way to validate. But I think that by the time that you get to Kickstarter, you should have a pretty idea of what validation is. So when we were talking, I've been thinking about validation this whole time and like how to validate a product. And there's a much simpler way to validate than Kickstarter. So if the overall topic is validation, let's rewind a little bit.
Sure, let's do that.
So the easiest way to validate is to build an audience and then launch a product to them, right? To like launch a little product to them. So I have a little system for how I find one customer and then 10 customers and then use Kickstarter once we have about 100 customers to like make sure that the product is valid. So let's say you have zero audience. The person that you're looking for. So we're going to do some unscalable work, which is I am going to reach out to you. I am looking, or you are going to reach out to me. But let's do you. Like you are the owner of a company, and you want you've never looked at your audience before. You've never sold anything before. You just have this idea. So first thing you need to do is figure out who you're going to serve. And the easiest way to figure out who resonates with you is to find people who like you, but not enough to lie to you. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm in my I'm almost 20 years from high school. And so I think about the people that I know from high school. They know me. Some of them like me, but like, I'm not friends with any of them. And like, none of them have a stake in my career. Like they're not close friends. They're not family. They're not my wife. They are people that like me, that I've done the work for building a relationship with for 20 years. But like, we're not going out for drinks. Like they're not personally invested in my life. Aside from us talking a couple of times a year. Does not mean I don't love them. And I have many fans that are from my high school, but like, I'm talking about the beginning. There's going to be somebody that likes you, but not enough to lie to you, which means, and the other side of that is your wife or mother or father or the people that love you the most have a desire for you to succeed and to not wound you. So they will think they're doing you a favor by telling you that things are good, but they're really doing you a disservice. But like, they don't know that. They think they're doing you a service by saying everything's great and everything's good and buying 10 copies of your book, even if it's not good, but they're not doing you a favor. So there's a sweet spot there. So do you know does that make sense? You know what I'm talking about here?
Yeah. I'm going to have to challenge my wife a little bit and just ask her, do you actually think the podcast is good?
Well, so there's another piece of this is because your wife might not be in the audience of people that like this thing. Yeah. So they might look at it and be like, that sounds good. It's nice. And like, I like your voice and but like, if they don't listen to business podcasts or mindset podcasts, then like they're doing you a disservice by telling you your thing is good, because they are looking like objectively, does it seem professional?
Yeah.
Not does it resonate with me? If it's resonating with them, it's because they love you, not probably because of the show itself.
Yeah.
My wife does not resonate with this show, but she's like, it's good. It's good. It's a good show. It's a good show. So there's a couple of things there. So there are people though that might be perfect in your audience and they are loved ones and they can be objective, but this is not common. Supportive is different. You want your partner to be supportive, but you don't necessarily want their opinion on whether you should move forward with a product.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you've got your one person. You now reach out to them and you're trying to learn all of the cool things about them, not demographics. The demographics come easier if you wait until you've made a couple of these before. I had a couple of these because you're going to do it more than once. But you're trying to get kind of a feeling of them, kind of like we talked about Melissa, like what makes them tick, what makes them resonate with you, what is the thing they love about you that makes them comment on all of your posts. So when you're looking for a person like this, you're not just looking for any random person you knew in high school. You're looking for a person that you knew in high school, but like comments on your stuff a lot. Seemingly like, I don't know why you're doing this. Like we weren't that close in high school. I'm happy and I like interacting with you, but like there's no logical reason for us to be there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so like that kind of person you're going to reach out to, and you're going to have this discussion. You can be like, oh, cool. Like, oh, you love rock and roll music. And like, oh, like, yeah, like that was a great movie. And like, what's your favorite movies and genres and whatever the thing is? Like, what are your other favorite podcasts? And like, where do you hang out? All of that stuff you're going to get, like some demographic information, but mostly just like, this is what I think I'm saying and how I'm saying it that resonates with somebody else. So then you're going to make your assumption. You're going to have like one lump of clay for your person. The audience. And then you're going to do that 10 more times or 9 more times. You've got 10 people now. You've done it. And you have like a model of like the things that they like, the places they hang out, the things that resonate with you. And now this is when you validate the idea first before you go to Kickstarter, because there's a lot of work there on Kickstarter. Now, this is when you're going to say, this is your first sort of focus group. You're like, I've had an idea for this bicycle or this podcast or this thing, whatever it is, you're making something. It can be low cost, it can be high cost. Something like less than $50 is probably good. $20 is really good, because like if you can't get people to buy a $20 thing, then like you really need to redesign it. But if they don't buy a $300 thing, that could be like price point. It could be timing. It could be all sorts of stuff. But you're going to make a little product for them. Either it's going to be like a book, like the book that I talk about, and they're generally about $20. Or if you're making a bike, it might be a kickstand, but it's going to be something that like you now are testing messaging and whether your product is good. And you want to make sure that these 10 people who already know and like you and should trust you and vibe the same way as you, that you can sort of start figuring out what they want with the messaging for it and all of that stuff. So you're gonna like start your kickstand, your like really cool new kickstand on this level, and you're just gonna like put up a PayPal page and be like, here's the PayPal page of like this thing. Like, if you really like this kickstand or this book or like this blueprint, like go buy it. And if you can't get 5 people of them to buy it, you need to redesign it and keep redesigning it and redesigning it and redesigning it and redesigning it and redesigning until you can get 5 or 10 people to buy it. And how do you redesign it? You go back and you say, dude, this is exactly what you said you wanted. Why didn't you buy it?
Yeah.
And you're not being mean about it. You're just saying, like, I need to know, because I want to make this en masse, and I need to know what I'm doing wrong. And they're going to tell you some direct things, but the real answer is probably in the indirect things they're not saying. Like they're just saying, oh, this is nice, instead of being like, I have to buy this now. Why isn't this available now? Which is like buyer intent.
Yeah.
So then you have those 10 people. And then you have 10 people. You have a profitable product. You have an audience that wants to buy it, a product, and a profit margin that you can use for marketing, a little bit of marketing. That is when you're going to start. That is when it is a good time to go to Kickstarter, because now you have pre-validated it, because you didn't really validate it. You validated it with 10 people that you know. Like, it's not really, that's a nothing. You've now got a nothing. You've now got 10 people, and a focus group is the worst kind of information, but like it's helpful in at least kind of drilling down the messaging and like shaking off all of the bad stuff. Where Kickstarter is really effective then is saying, I have this cool kickstand that like I need to make $5,000 to make, to produce. I have $100. I need to go to Kickstarter or Indiegogo or another place to raise the funds necessary to actually mass produce this thing. But the pre-validation part of this is where you're at least getting some seed money to like maybe get a prototype, maybe at least get some nice marketing imagery, but definitely to test your messaging, because the people that are going to resonate with the product are supposedly the same people of these 10 people that are all kind of the same kind of person. And so you should, from those 10 people, already have the messaging. If you don't already have the messaging, this is when you can go out to Facebook groups because those 10 people are going to say where they hang out, Facebook groups and meetup communities and all these places. They're going to give you all the information you need to go into those places and find more people and keep pulling them out in the way that, like, you know, you have a good conversation in a Facebook group and then you friend that person and then, you know, you make friends with them and your network grows. But you really need to start a group, start this building before you get to Kickstarter, because you need the messaging right. You need the seed backers who are going to go and buy your kickstand, because Kickstarter will then they have things like Project We Love, or Indiegogo works on algorithms alone. But if you can't get that mass of people at the beginning, they are going to just abandon your project and assume it's not popular, considering only about a third of the projects on Kickstarter succeed.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about validation, it is a great way if you see a problem in the marketplace that the marketplace is not solving. Like, wow, kickstands would be great if you kicked them and they actually didn't drop your bike over, which happens to me all of the time. Like, why is my kickstand even there if I just have to lean it against the table? So you see a problem in the market, you pre-validate it with these 10 people, you then start going into Facebook groups and joining the community, knowing what the messaging is. You've already gotten the messaging. You kind of know the problem. You're sort of building these people up. And then you launch the Kickstarter to say, okay, I have tested this with my audience, and now we're going to bring it to a bunch of nobodies, like people who don't know me at all.
Yeah, cold traffic.
Yes, cold traffic. Who don't know who I am. We're hoping that the warm traffic that we've already been cultivating pushes it up so that cold traffic sees it. And now, if we did our job right, we got the messaging right, we got the product price points right, we got the imagery right, all of this we're validating with the people who are in our thing. If we've already done this, then we should succeed, theoretically. As long as there's a market for this thing. And the great thing about Kickstarter is these are all people who are early adopters. So at the beginning of the cycle, they are all looking for cool new products, all of them. So if you can't convince them, either your messaging is wrong, or there's not a need in the marketplace, or you built the wrong audience. And so Kickstarter is about validation, but you really need to be doing that work beforehand. And that's kind of a minor process in 10 minutes about how you actually do the pre-validation and get the messaging right before you go to Kickstarter and actually try and get the seed money for your product.
Right. Well, Russell, I think that was probably the best crash course on validation anybody is ever going to find out there. So yeah, I will. That was awesome, because my wheels are already turning like, oh, that makes so much more sense. And I was like, I think I can find 10 people to like pre-validate the ideas I have. So I think that's fantastic, because it's very actionable and realistic, and as far as a goal, whereas a lot of people, you come up with your idea and then you're like, I'm going to launch a Kickstarter, and then you put out, even in Kickstarter, your number it's still low, but it's daunting if it's your very first time really doing it. You're like, oh geez, like I have to raise $5,000 from people who don't know me, so hopefully they like my idea. But if you validate it, like you said, if you pre-validate it with a group of 10 people who know and like you, not only are you going to get maybe that seed money to try and help do the Kickstarter, you're going to have a lot more confidence, because you're going to go, well, geez, yeah, like they, 5 out of 10 of them said they would buy it and have actually already given me money for it. So I really like that. I think that's a cool idea.
And I've been doing that since my whole career. I didn't know I was doing it intentionally with Ichabod, but Ichabod spent years doing that with like, here's 5 pages. Is it cool? Is it cool? Here's 10, here's 20, here's 30, here's the first issue. And like, I was giving it to people so that they could kind of make sure I wasn't going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And what you'll find is you might be like, oh God, I don't think there's 100 people here to give me $50. Like, this is not going to work. And then you go, cool, I don't have to go and waste a month on Kickstarter for it. You figure it out, and you figure out how rabid that fan base is, and how much they are looking for new products. There's some fan bases that just like, they want new stuff, and like they don't care about that. Some, like the Lovecraft fan base, they just seem to always want new stuff. Like even if they have a billion things, they just want like 1,000,001 things. And then you have other fan bases that like are not quite so rabid. So by doing the pre-validation and doing all of these pieces, and maybe it's not 10 just seems to be like a good number that you can hit for. And this might take you, the reason why I think this is all stuff you can do without paying a human being to do. So like I shoot myself in the foot when I talk about like consulting, because like this is all stuff that like you as a human being might take a year to do, but like you can do it. And this is what all marketing agencies are doing when they're trying to validate products. They're bringing little focus groups in and little other ones. And if they're doing a national campaign, they're doing it around the country, and then they're scaling it up to bigger and bigger and bigger products. And it's all stuff that's very actionable that you can do, as you mentioned. Like it might take you a while, especially if you don't know the product that you like, what the product is, or you just kind of have a feeling these are the people that you want to serve. But the more you spend, the longer you spend in that community, the more confidence you'll get that you're on the right track or the wrong track. And when, by the time you launch that Kickstarter or whatever that product is, whether it's a course, the more you, or Kickstarter or whatever, the more you have that template, you can be like, dude, I know that you're going to love this because like I talked to 1,000 of you and like you all talked about how your bike was tipping over too much, or like you all were concerned about like X, Y, and Z thing. And so like, I know for a fact that like, I might not be the right person to deliver it. Like, I don't know, like I'm trying to convince you that I'm the right person to deliver it, but I friggin' know for a fact that this is an issue that that thousands of other people have. And when you can come at it with that kind of confidence, that is the kind of stuff that sways people into action, because what they're looking for is a leader that understands their problem and that will solve it and won't disappear on them in a week or a month or a year once this product is done.
Yeah, I really like that part you said at the end, was they're looking for a leader that they can trust is going to still be there to kind of guide them through that journey of whatever it is that they're looking for to solve their problem. We've definitely covered a lot. That was especially like I would say the first half of our conversation was not what we were really planning, but that was amazing. And then you gave us a crash course on validation. So I have to ask, with everything that we have talked about, what is the one thing, that one piece of advice you would want to share with the audience to help them level up wherever they need it most?
Well, I said the usual thing I say is the self-worth thing, but I was able to put that in at the beginning, so I'm not going to go back to that. The thing that sort of wraps all of this up, though, is that the hardest step to take is the first one, and it's the one that almost nobody takes. It feels really daunting because when you're at the starting line, everybody looks like there's just a mass of people. They're everywhere. Just like, oh my God, all of these people, how am I going to get ahead? But as you go, put one foot in front of the other, put one step in front of the other, people will fall off. Even if you're going slow, like even if you're going like at a snail's pace, people will just fall off. They will get sick. They will get tired. They will get bored. Some of them will finish the race. And frankly, like once they finish the race, like a lot of them will just like then go run in a different race. You know, they're like, Stephen King is not running the same race as I'm running as a writer. Like we're the same, like technically, but like he's running a race with like in the billions and I'm running a race in like the thousands. So it's just like a different race. So some of them will just graduate to a different race. And meanwhile, and some people are going to, especially if you're doing coaching or the kind of stuff that I do for the Complete Creative, people are going to need somebody that is at the point you're at the beginning. I was just talking to my wife about this. Like, I don't think I can accurately talk about what it was like to break in anymore. I can remember what it was like to break in. I can strategically tell you what to break in, but I have lost the feeling of what it means to break in. Like I just forget what it's like because I now have been doing this for 10 years. Luckily, I have a Russell from 3 years ago who is very concerned about that, and but there's somebody out there right now that is using the strategies to break in now that are working now. And they might be running the race real slow. And like there are people that are at that place and that need that exact thing at the time that they're being said. So putting one foot in front of the other and moving forward is more than almost anybody will ever do. And if you can just put one foot in front of the other, no matter how slow you go, you will gain traction, because people will just fall off, or they will slip and they will need you, and you'll be behind them, and you can pick them up and get them back on their feet. All of these things that you can do by just moving forward slowly and methodically. Now, if you want to move fast, that's also great. I can help you move fast. I can help you move slow. But as long as you're moving, it is the most important part, because it is almost impossible to push something forward from inertia. And the fact that you got it from inertia to moving forward, you are so far ahead of the game. No matter how far behind you think you are, I swear to Aisha, you are way further ahead than 99% of the other people that are running the race, because they haven't even started yet.
That is fantastic advice, and I appreciate you sharing that, Russell. I have a feeling that anybody who listens to this episode is going to want to reach out, connect, follow your journey and what you're doing. What's that one place that they can go to follow you and get more information about you?
Since we had two shows, I'm gonna give 2 links. Is that okay?
That's fair. I think that's fair.
Okay, so if as a creator, I think The Complete Creative is the best resource I've found for like what it means to lead a creative life. We've had over 200 episodes of our podcast. I've had hundreds of articles, epic blog posts, free courses, paid courses, and you can find them all at thecompletecreative.com. But some of you may think, oh wow, like I want to follow him on social media, or like I want to follow his books, or I want to follow something like novel wise. So if you like mythology, monsters, and magic, and then that is the thing that I do for my books. And you can find all of my books, my social media, and sign up for my mailing list where you get a couple of samples of my books at russellnohelty.com.
Awesome. I very much appreciate the conversation. That was a lot of fun. Like you said, it kind of was 2 episodes in one, but ton of value. I very much appreciate everything you shared. So
Thank
thanks
you so
again
much for
being
me.
a guest. Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. Thanks for being a guest.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Take care. Thanks for listening to Get Coach 360. If you're looking for more information, you can head over to our website, which is getcoach360.com. You'll find the show notes for this and every other episode there. And if getting actionable advice every week from professional coaches is something you want more of, then make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.